interesting situation is with enemies, prisoners of war, with Russians who surrender to Ukrainian armed forces. Russians surrender in scores, and sometimes not even to the armed forces. Sometimes they just surrender to local territorial defense. There are interesting stories how Russians on armored vehicles, they pour out the diesel before entering the town, and so they dismount from the vehicles and walk on foot to surrender to our militaries. And there are even more interesting stories when Russians knock on people's doors in small villages asking for food. And there is actual story when two such Russians who got lost in some suburbs of some small town, they knocked on the door of a villager, and he opened the door to them, and they asked him for food. And so he let them in, and he turned on the news, and he showed them what's going on, what they are doing, how Russian army bombarding our civilian cities, how many casualties, how many dead, how many tragedies already this war already have incurred from both sides. And when they saw this, they were shocked, because they were told absolutely different story. They were told there are several different stories or legends, I would say, that Russian high commanders use to brainwash their soldiers. One of the story is some of them were told that they are going to Donbass, to LNR, so-called self-proclaimed republics, LNR, DNR, to protect them. Some of them were told that they are going to exercise somewhere just for military training, somewhere on the border with Ukraine. And then they were just, nobody told them that they were going to cross the border. And when somebody realized that they were actually crossing the border with a different country, and it was too late, because if they refused, then they would face punishment according to the military law, because they are military, so they must obey the orders. So there are different stories. And some of them, they just believe that some banderovцы here, they're just people, like, maybe not people, maybe some animals, or people with two heads and horns instead of ears, something like that, some crazy stories. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but I guess you get the message, you understand what I mean. And so yeah, Russian militaries, they are demoralized. Many of them are demoralized, and the supply is so bad. Apparently, they don't have enough food supply, so that they are forced to ask locals for food. And there are occasions when Russian militaries, they loot food supermarkets, sneakers, chocolates, because they are hungry. They don't have any rations. They don't have anything to eat, so they loot local stores, food stores and supermarkets. But there are different types of troops that Russia sends to Ukraine. One type, the most aggressive and cruel, is the elite, regular military elite units, battalions. They are doing the most dirty job, and I think they are knowing what they are doing. They are knowing that they are shelling innocent civilians. They know that their job is to kill basically Ukrainian population. This is one category of Russian military. And they are doing the hardest and the dirtiest job in Ukraine. There is another category of like a broader mass of Russian militaries. Mostly they are conscripts, very young young boys, mostly under 20 years old, and they don't have really any motivation to fight. Many of them are from very poor regions, from poor families, sometimes and very often, quite often, orphans without parents. And yes, these people, they just basically, they probably went to the army for free food and clothing. And they don't really want to fight, especially when they see this resistance, strong resistance from Ukraine. I'm preparing now captioning of couple of interviews with those prisoners of war taken by Ukrainians, and it will be a very interesting to watch.